Hi, I'm Jim Yogendorf. My wife Elizabeth and I are continuing our journey of traveling together to a new America. Elizabeth passed away about a year ago, but we're together still, heart to heart, in life and death, moving together, reaching out to people all across this country. And one of the things I like to highlight from time to time is some of the great people and their voices from our American past. One of these was a woman, African American woman named Ida B. Wells. Ida was born in 1862 in Mississippi. She suffered a great tragedy when she was about 16. Both her parents, one of her siblings, were carried away by a yellow fever epidemic. So she began teaching, and then when she was about 20, she moved with three of her other siblings to Memphis, Tennessee. She continued her teaching, and she also began writing articles for newspapers about the racial discrimination that was then rampant in Memphis, Tennessee, and throughout the South. A few years later, she even was able to become co-owner and editor of her own newspaper. And she continued writing. And then when she was about 30 years old, three of her close friends were lynched by a white mob. Lynching was then really going on all over the South, a way to terrorize and control the African American population, and as well as voting rights discrimination to keep African Americans in their place. And Ida wrote an article in her newspaper about her friends lynching and condemning Memphis for allowing this to happen. As a result, her newspaper was burned to the ground. She felt she had to leave. She moved to New York City and then Chicago, and then she wrote a famous article. It was called Southern Horrors, Lynch Law in all its phases. And this pamphlet became very famous and reached all over. And she became famous about her efforts to stand up and destroy lynching. Frederick Douglass, the great African-American orator, writer, statesman, wrote a letter to her. Among things he said, "Brave woman, you have done your people and mine a service which can neither be weighed nor measured. If American conscience were only half alive, if the American church and clergy were only half Christianized, if American moral sensibility were not hardened by persistent infliction of outrage and crime against colored people, a scream of horror, shame, and indignation would rise to heaven wherever your pamphlet shall be read." End quote. Ida went on for another 30 years, really working for people in Chicago. She became one of the founders of the NAACP. She was just one person, but she stood up and changed things. And nowadays we see, kind of similar things still continuing, going on. This movement by people and politicians against the teaching of critical race theory in our schools to our children. It's a very vague concept, critical race theory, but it's being used to suppress the teaching of racism, of any kind, basically, and really suppressing what our children can learn about their past. Um, you know, this mindset that politicians are seizing on and trying to scare people about this is the same mindset that existed in Ida B. Wells' time. It still exists in our society, and it must be met and faced and for what it is, because without being able to see who we are and where we've come from, and our children growing up and acknowledging everything about our past, good and bad, and who we are, we can't grow into a larger image of ourselves in this world and in our country. We have to stand up, and we have to, not only is this effort to suppress this teaching of anything whatsoever slightly to do with racism, but it's also an effort to suppress the bravery and courage of people like Ida B. Wells, who have so magnificently given their lives and efforts to shape our history and who we are. We have to grow into a greater image of ourselves beyond these little identities and divisions of race and ethnicity and religion even, and grow beyond them into an awareness of who we really are. Human beings, humanity, one people. And just to finish off, I'd just like to say, have faith with yourself. Have faith in your dreams, in your greatest dreams for yourself and for our country and for our world. Nam Myo Renge Kyo.